from the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us.
A tragic shooting has lawmakers calling for more civility. We have the latest from our D.C. bureau.
I just didn't want her to wake up and hear the news and not know what was going on.
And Arizona Senator Jeff Flake jumps into action, what he was thinking when the shots rang out.
Plus, Arizonans react to the first shooting injuring a congressman since former Representative Gabrielle Giffords was shot in Tucson in 2011.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Felisa Gardenas.
And I'm Madison Connor. Thank you for joining us. Concerns tonight about the safety of Congress members when they are gathered outside of the Capitol.
That's after this morning's shooting that injured 5 people and killed 1. The shooting took place in Alexandria, Virginia, as Republican lawmakers practice for tomorrow's congressional baseball game, an annual tradition during which Republicans and Democrats play against each other for charity. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise was shot in the hip and taken to the hospital. He's currently in critical condition. Congressional staffer Zach Barth and Tyson food lobbyist Matt Mika were also wounded, along with 2 Capitol Police officers, David Bailey and Crystal Griner. All are expected to recover. Arizona Senator Jeff Flake and many other members of Congress were also on the scene. The shooter has been identified as 66-year-old James Hodgkinson from Illinois. Hodgkinson died earlier today after being shot by Capitol officers at the scene. Our Washington team has been covering this tragic event all day.
Cronkite News reporter Noelle Lilly was in Alexandria this morning. Noelle, what more can you tell us?
So I was actually there live this morning when the shooting occurred in Alexandria, Virginia. I was headed back to my car to grab something from my vehicle when I heard the gunshots ring out behind me. Little did I and any of us know that what started off as a normal morning would soon turn into a federal investigation and a crime scene.
And I hear the big blam, and I thought it was a car backfiring at first until I see the rifle barrel and a white male taking careful aim at congressmen, staffers, whoever he could get a hold of.
No one could have anticipated that a simple morning baseball practice would send 5 people to the hospital, but that's exactly what happened in Alexandria, Virginia today. Republican lawmakers were practicing for their annual congressional baseball game when a man opened fire on the field. 46-year-old David Woodruff was jogging around the neighborhood when shots were fired.
This morning, I was coming down Monroe and actually happened to glance over and saw that there was a group of folks playing baseball, which I thought was a little out of place for that early in the morning, but didn't think much of it. Got about 10 more yards down the road and then immediately heard about a dozen, 14 or so gunshots go off.
Woodruff says shootings are unexpected for this neighborhood.
A pretty quiet part of Alexandria. You know, it's a family-friendly area.
Capitol Police, who were at the scene when the shooting occurred, fired back at the suspect, and Alexandria Police arrived shortly after.
Our units responded and were on scene within 3 minutes. The officers received fire from a suspect, and they returned fire, and that part of the investigation is ongoing as we speak.
Brown added that the investigation would be taken over by the FBI.
At this point, the Alexandria Police Department, because this case involves the assault on a federal officer, the Federal Bureau of Investigation will be taking over the investigation.
But despite the chaos that ensued, law enforcement officials said the community is safe.
Chiefs have said this is a secure community at this point. It's an active investigation. However, the security of the community is paramount, and I want to reassure you that that's the case.
The congressional baseball game is still scheduled to occur tomorrow at 7:05 p.m. at Nationals Park. For now, live in Washington, Noelle Lilly, Cronkite News.
2 Arizona lawmakers are on the roster to play in tomorrow's charity baseball game. Representative Ruben Gallego is playing for the Democrats, and Senator Jeff Flake is playing for the Republican team.
Senator Flake was at the practice this morning and jumped into action when Representative Scalise was shot.
I wanted to get out to Steve, finally did. I got out there and we applied pressure for a while. He was coherent, so.
Flake called Scalise' wife to let her know what had happened and talked more about what his experience was in the late morning.
You could see where he had crawled from across some of the infield and the trail of blood to where he was. He'd moved about 10 to 15 yards. Great effort to do that. I think he was trying to get away from the gunman.
At this time, the shooter is believed to have been working alone. Hodgkinson was outspoken about his anti-Republican beliefs, often taking to social media to criticize President Trump and other Republicans.
He also volunteered on Bernie Sanders' unsuccessful presidential campaign.
I am sickened by this despicable act, and let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms.
This tragic event hits close to home for many Arizonans, as we are reminded of the Tucson shooting in 2011, when then Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot in the head.
Today's shooting is the first time a congressman has been injured in a shooting since Giffords was attacked. Cronkite News reporter Tyler Finger is live right now in Tucson. Tyler, how are the people reacting?
Survivors of the Tucson shooting were actually together today for a meeting about the memorial to honor those who were killed at the Safeway back in January of 2011. But the meeting was scheduled long before today's tragedy, but it brought back painful memories. Tonight in Tucson, fresh wounds.
Does what happened in Washington today reopen any wounds for you from what happened 6 years ago?
Yes. Absolutely.
For Pam Simon, January 8th, 2011 is a day that will stick with her. When she heard the news about today's shooting, she was taken back.
My very first response was that I know how it feels.
For former Congressman Ron Barber, who was shot during the Tucson attack in 2011, the political rhetoric in this country is a problem.
We need to get rid of that way of approaching politics. It has no place in a democracy. It has no place in any country, but particularly in a place where we have the right to vote. We can change our leadership by the ballot box, not by the bullet.
But now the hope is everyone comes together.
Though many people in Washington, D.C. come from somewhere else, they are today a family in the way that Tucson was a family, and I can only hope that they respond in the beautiful way that Tucson did.
Many different efforts have spawned from the Tucson tragedy. Here at Banner University Medical Center, they're focused on teaching bystanders how to respond to a tragedy like what happened today in Washington. Live in Tucson, Tyler Finger, Cronkite News.
While votes were canceled today in Congress, members still took to the floor to voice concern about today's shooting.
Some expressed issues about security, others about civil discourse.
I do think the events this morning give rise to some additional concerns of what happens off the Hill when ordinarily there might not be the sort of security measures that are necessary in place. And I think is another wake-up call to all of us to be vigilant, to be aware of our situation, and to exercise concern for our own safety.
We disagree, and that's okay. We've said that for 2 centuries, that we can disagree. We don't solve it this way.
Arizona Governor Doug Ducey is in D.C. today to discuss Arizona's relationship with Mexico.
He sat down with our Washington team today and shared his thoughts on the shooting.
I was shocked at the news of the shooting this morning, and I want to extend thoughts and prayers and positive energy to Representative Scalise and all the staffers and other people that were affected by this. I want to say thank goodness for the Capitol Police and the fact that they were there and were able to act quickly.
Arizona lawmakers took to social media to share their support for their fellow congressman.
Former Representative Gabrielle Giffords released a statement saying, quote, "I also know the courage it takes to recover from a shooting like this, and I know that Steve and everyone there have such courage in great supply," end quote. Representative Martha McSally tweeted, quote, "We are Americans and we need to be united. The enemy is out there, not amongst us," end quote. And Representative Ruben Gallego also shared his thoughts and concerns on social media. Earlier today, he tweeted, quote, "Praying for my colleague Steve Scalise, officers and staff injured in today's shooting. Thanks to Capitol Police for your service and dedication," end quote. Governor Ducey was in D.C. today to talk about Arizona's economic ties with Mexico.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how he plans to boost the trade relationship between the U.S. and Mexico.
Arizona Game and Fish is helping make a splash this month, but it's not quite what you'd expect. What changes are in store for Valley Lakes and ponds?
I think I finally found my hallelujah. I've been waiting for this moment all my life now. All my dreams are coming true, yeah. I've been waiting for this moment. It's good to be alive right about now. Right about now. Heaven knows you're a dreamer. Don't hide it from anyone. Don't hide it from anyone. Hey, would you believe me if I said we are here for a reason now? This is our life. This is what counts. This is for us. I will go anywhere for you. I will go anywhere for you.
Officially from 36, and he hooks it in. Arizona State wins. Keeping one deep, and it is caught. Jalen Strong. Do you believe
it? The relationship between Washington and Mexico has been chilly in recent months, with President Donald Trump calling for everything from a border wall to a new deal on the North American Free Trade Agreement. But Arizona Governor Doug Ducey was in Washington today to call for a thaw in that relationship. Reporter Emma Lockhart has more on the governor's address today.
We're believers in free and fair trade, and as governor, I want to do everything I can to build the quality of life in the state of Arizona.
Quality of life that relies on a strong trade relationship with Mexico. That was a message Governor Ducey delivered at a conference at the Wilson Center today. The upcoming renegotiation of NAFTA remains a pressing issue for the governor. Despite being a supporter of free trade, he is still open to improvement.
There are other issues and political realities that happen at the border, and that's where having a good relationship where you can communicate and put problem solvers together, set a timeline and set a goal that Arizona is benefiting from.
He also brought up critical issues like drug trafficking at the border, a problem he says can be combated through stronger Arizona-Mexico relations.
The world has changed tremendously since the early 1990s. So in the light of that, let's take a look at the agreement and see where we can do better.
Ducey said he is committed to building that relationship even more. In Washington, Emma Lockhart, Cronkite News.
Governor Ducey will join business leaders and policymakers at the Arizona-Mexico Commission Summit in June.
The Arizona Game and Fish Community Fishing Program can expect a jump in fish populations this month. After having leftover money for the year, they decided to use that money to buy more fish for the lakes and ponds throughout the state. I dove in to see what exactly that means for the community. 250,000 fish are being stocked into Arizona waters after Arizona Game and Fish found some spare dollars for urban lakes.
We had some money unexpectedly come to us. There was a couple of projects that fell through and the money had to be spent before the end of the fiscal year. So it came down from the top, said buy some fish. We said yes, we will.
This is being done in order to help support the community fishing program, which is completely self-sufficient.
This program was designed to be self-sustaining and pay for itself, hence the partnership fees and the separate license the community fishing license as opposed to the general fishing license. So we wanted to make sure it was a self-sustaining program and not a drain on anyone.
But stocking the lakes does take a lot of work. Arizona Game and Fish teams up with cities as well as Mr. Fish, the fish stocking company that drives the fish from Arkansas. Besides checking the water quality, it is important to also check on the fish.
I want to make sure that the fish are going in, and when they're jumping at the surface, they're popping and acclimating nicely. They look like happy fish.
Not long after the fish were stocked, people started to show up with fishing poles. One had some advice for fellow park goers.
It's a good thing when people don't abuse it. It's a good thing when people don't come. You know, if you bring your trash to the park, take it home with you.
Anglers will be able to catch trout, bass, and catfish throughout the month of June. As the fish are being restocked across the state, make sure to take note of the rules and guidelines shared by the Arizona Game and Fish Department, as well as the park where you plan to fish.
We reported last week about the low water levels in Lake Mead, a critical water source for Phoenix residents.
But City Council is taking action. Coming up on Cronkite News, how a new conservation plan will help keep our water running.
And taking a look across the valley, we can see that we are almost all back up into those triple digits, but we've got a lot in store for the week ahead. Your full forecast coming up.
Combat is like crack cocaine. It's an enormous high, but it has enormous costs. And I think that we make a big mistake if we say, oh, well, war is hell. We all know the war is hell story. It is, but there's an enormously exhilarating part of it.
Officially from 36, and he hooks it in! Arizona State wins! Keeping one deep, and it is caught! Dylan Strong! Do you believe it? All right.
Something wrong with this plot. The actors here have not got a clue.
Fascinating.
Baby, I'm howling for you.
You know, sometimes I wish I wasn't so beloved.
Mockingbird, can't you see? Little girl got a hold on me like wow. Baby, I'm howling for you.
It's literally one for the history books.
Enjoy.
An update to a story we brought you last week. Phoenix City Council unanimously approved the water conservation plan for Lake Mead. Their agreement with tribal, state, and federal leaders hopes to protect the Colorado River. The Gila River Indian Community and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation plan to save 35% of the Colorado River water, which is the amount used annually by Phoenix residents. This plan also includes a contribution of 13 billion gallons of the river water in Lake Mead this year. The funding will come from the Colorado River Resiliency Fund, and Phoenix will also give $2 million towards the program.
Fire officials continue to work on wildfire containment across Arizona. The U.S. Department of Agriculture are adding new restrictions aimed at preventing human-caused wildfires. Starting tomorrow in Coconino and Kebab Forest, fires, campfires, and use of charcoal or wood stoves will be prohibited, although these activities will still be permitted in designated sites. So far, the Cochise County fire near Dragoon is under control, and as of today, 2/3 of the fire have been contained. But another fire in the Cochise County has yet to be put out. So far, the fire in Wilcox has burned 23 square miles, and in northern Arizona, a fire in Flagstaff has burned nearly 9 square miles of Kendrick Mountain's northeastern side. The nearby US 80 continues to be closed due to reduced visibility.
Even without a fire, it's still getting hot here in the valley.
Emily Bloom gives us a look at what the rest of her day is going to look like.
Yes, we are officially back up into those triple digits. Sunny and calm right now as we head into our first major heat wave of the season. Our high today of 104 right at our average, but still below that record of 115. However, it's going to be a much different story this weekend. As we take a look across the valley, we can see that we are almost all back up into those triple digits. And taking a look ahead, tomorrow marks the first official day of our monsoon season. We're going to be at 108. Saturday, that heat watch does in fact become a heat warning. For Father's Day weekend, sorry dads, but we are going to be up into those triple digits and looking at those record temps. Tuesday, we see a potential high of 120 degrees. If that does in fact happen, it will be the 4th time ever in history Phoenix has seen a temperature that hot. For Cronkite Weather, I'm Emily Bloom.
Basketball players across the country are committed to their passion for the sport, despite any obstacles they might face.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how a tournament encourages these athletes to stand up and play.
Possibilities. Your day is filled with them.
Reach up, energy in the fingertips, collapse. TV, play Downton Abbey.
And PBS helps everyone discover theirs. Anytime, anywhere.
Up in the sky, you can see it.
PBS, we're with you for life.
I think I finally found my hallelujah. I've been waiting for this moment all my life now. All my dreams are coming true, yeah. I've been waiting for this moment. It's good to be alive right about now. Now.
7 teams participated in the Cactus Classic this last weekend. This 3-on-3 stand-up basketball tournament features amputees from across the country. Our Cronkite News reporter Kelly Broderick takes us inside Ability 360 in Phoenix with a look at how this event came out.
According to the Amputee Coalition, there are over 185,000 amputees performed each year. That's an average of 507 people losing limbs each day. Centers like Ability 360 in Phoenix empower those with disabilities. One of those programs is Cactus Classic. David Banks said when he was younger, basketball was his entire life. But 17 years ago, a four-wheeling accident in Rocky Point, Mexico forever changed him.
I was out there on vacation with some family and friends riding four-wheelers. There was this one jump. I said, I gotta hit it. And I ended up hitting this jump really hard, and there was a 15-foot drop on the other end I didn't know was there.
Banks would spend several weeks in the hospital after the accident, and doctors amputated his right leg above the knee. 13 years later, he wanted to return to basketball. That was when he went to Ability 360 in Phoenix.
I was looking for a place where there was stand-up amputee basketball, and it didn't exist. It was only wheelchair basketball. So I came here to this great facility thinking if anybody had any opportunities for amputee basketball, it had to be this facility.
He connected with Ability 360 Vice President and General Manager Gus Lazier, and the two co-founded the Cactus Classic in 2015, a 3-on-3 stand-up amputee basketball tournament. The tournament wasn't exclusive to Phoenix residents, as participants showed up from around the country, including Baltimore, Maryland resident Mark Burkham.
I think the important thing is to
be willing to embrace the fact that you're an amputee and be proud and not be afraid of who you are or afraid to show other people who you are. But at the same time, you have to fully own the fact that being an amputee is not the main thing that defines you.
Whenever I bring a new amputee out here, their eyes open up and they're like, I can't believe there's so many guys out here doing amazing things like this. So I think for a new amputee or anybody with a new disability, it's just really empowering for them to see this type of thing. It really helps them and gives them an advantage on this journey.
Banks said the Cactus Classic is the only stand-up amputee basketball tournament in the country. The main focus of this tournament is to encourage athletes who use prosthetics to not let their disability hold them back. While the tournament may be in its early years, it has reached individuals from Colorado to Maryland and continues to grow with each year. For Cronkite News, I'm Kelly Broderick.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, world-renowned physicist Lawrence Krauss has the latest science news, including gravitational wave observations from 3 billion light years away. That's the next Arizona Horizon.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, our Leading Edge team looks at a project that deals with some of coal's worst problems. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.